All right, I am excited because I've been able to confirm dates easier than this to get this Michael Meehan on our Leaders Who Care series. So welcome, Michael. No distractions, no interruptions. We're just going to flow through here. So no, in all seriousness, welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thanks, Mark. I'm glad to finally make it on.
Well, you made it on a long time ago, but you didn't make it on. But you are a leader who cares, and now we're going to do like what is it? Is it Missouri? Is the Show Me State? Which one is that? I can't remember.
You're
One of the
talking to
two
a
probably.
Canadian. I have no idea.
Yeah. Hey, what are you talking about?
Hey,
So the best way to start is give a brief introduction of yourself. However, with men especially, I have to put an asterisk to that because men generally just tell me they go right to what they do, what their title is and what they do. But that's not the question. The question is where are you from originally, where you are now, whatever you feel comfortable telling us about your family and whatnot, any siblings, maybe something you've never told anybody before that you want to reveal to the world. That's always fun too.
Jesus, Mark.
But no, it's just Mark. It's not Jesus Mark. It's just Mark. Same religion, but different guy.
Yeah,
Um, so share a little bit about you, Michael.
sure. Yeah, well, I am Canadian,
Yeah.
but my career has taken place largely outside of Canada. I've got four kids. I live on Vancouver Island, Canada. This is home of the newlywed and nearly dead. I've dedicated what 25, a little over 25 years to impact and climate finance and so on. I'm a supremely unsuccessful musician.
Oh, well,
So
at least
I'm
it's
not sure.
supremely.
Supremely.
Um,
Well, on some of the things that I host where people should know who I am, and they go, "Oh, who are you?" And I go, "Oh, I'm just a supremely unsuccessful musician." That's usually how I introduce
and
myself.
what do you play?
I play guitar. I have a diploma in jazz, and which I've never used. And when I was a much younger kid, I traveled up and down the eastern seaboard of the United States and Canada trying to make a living in a rock band, and it didn't work out well. And yeah,
But
yeah.
what a great experience, though.
I was young. I was young. And you know what? The drummer of that band became the premier of the Yukon.
Really? Oh my
For real.
God.
Yeah. This is
Um,
bizarre.
the
Bizarre.
premier, as it is premier, but then of the Yukon. Wow.
Of the Yukon. I didn't even know the Yukon had a premier, but yeah. Yeah,
That's
they do.
uh that's incredible. I'd love to talk to that guy. There's got to be some interesting stuff there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. His last name is even Silver. That's where the silver rush was. So
that's pretty cool too.
can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't. But those experiences of, I spent not I spent 8 weeks in the Middle East when I was younger. Staying in hostels on the Sinai Desert and all sorts of stuff.
Oh wow.
Great experience. I don't want to say it's the only time you can do that, but when you're young, it's definitely the time to do it. So do you have siblings? I can't remember. Brothers, sisters?
Yeah, yeah. I do. I've got there are four kids in my family, so one sister and well, I have two brothers, so there's three brothers. And yeah, yeah. One's in publishing, one's a Jesuit priest. Do you remember when the Pope got tackled back in 2009? If you
Hmm.
look that up online, you'll see four people on the altar in the Vatican for midnight mass. One of them looks like a much skinnier version of me. It's my brother.
Wow.
And yeah. And my sister is a high school, private school principal in Ontario.
That's amazing. You're almost like the Pope and his brother type of thing, and except it's your brother that was closer to the Pope or whatever, and the other way around right
Well,
now.
you know what? For years, we would go back to Nova Scotia to see my parents, and we would have this little competition among all the mostly the brothers about who's achieved the most this year, right? And so my brother did his Harvard MBA and he did quite well, and my career has taken me to some pretty interesting places, and
Mhm.
so every year we'd come home and say, hey, this is what we did this year. But then after my brother met the Pope, which now he's done several times, that was it. Like we stopped doing it because he won.
You
He won
won.
the competition permanently for hanging out in the Vatican. So
Wow, it's amazing what siblings do. So on that subject, then, what were you like as a kid? Like, where did you grow up mostly? Were you the lemonade stand entrepreneur, or were you quiet and a reader? Were you sports? What were you like? What was
no, no, no. I was a little guitar rat. I was not a fantastic student. And I did okay in school, but really was sort of forced into it to be able to graduate. And yeah, no, I was growing up. I was in so many different bands, and I would just be playing music all the time.
Yeah,
And
but
I
what
still play
age was
music to this
that?
day.
What age was
Oh
that?
man, I started playing when I was 7, 8,
Wow.
and I still play to this day. So yeah, so that's really all I cared about growing up. I was not an entrepreneur. I sort of fell into that sort of life. And which I can tell you the whole story. But yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship started my career, but that was never really what I really loved to do. Yeah. So it was kind of an interesting thing. So the arts has always been a big part of what I do. Like I do a lot of photography, I do a lot of music, and I still do to this day. But professionally, that's not what I've done.
Yeah, but those are the imagination that we've needed for so long that kind of stopped a little bit after the NASA stopped for a while and
Hmm.
imagination started to go down to some degree and everything and it's a whole other conversation with AI and everything that's going. Well, even before AI, you have got a lot of music. It wasn't bands going like the Beatles went in Germany, they were playing in bands and you were going in bands. You got discovered. Now it's a lot different industry to say the least. But
It's a different industry, but it's a different culture. I grew up in Nova Scotia, Canada, where you go to a pub and somebody will pull out an instrument, and then five other people will pull out an instrument, and that's literally how it's done. And so everybody plays an instrument of some kind. Whereas I live on the West Coast now, and nobody plays. No one. Like it's bizarre. It's
and
almost
that
like a completely separate thing.
and that's why, including hockey, why Nova Scotia is my one of my favorite provinces. They were a client of mine at Deloitte, by the way. I don't know if I ever told you that. And
No way.
we did do some really good singing when we were finished working and going to the pubs in Halifax and everything. And it was a blast.
Yeah.
It was so much
Yeah.
fun. And I didn't have an instrument, nor did I have a voice that was an instrument either, but it was still pretty fun.
Yeah. Enough drinks on Argyle Street, and it doesn't matter anymore.
So how long did you stay in Nova Scotia?
I was there until I went to university. So I was there until I went to university when I was 17, 18. I went to Western and in Ontario,
Hmm.
and didn't like it much, to be honest with you. It was my first time out, and then so I was there for a few years, and then I visited some friends in Victoria in the summer, and just loved it. Loved Victoria, and sold the other half of my plane ticket when back when you could do that type of thing. And I stayed, transferred my university to Victoria, and then I stayed here for oh God, 20 years, 15, 20 years. And yeah, I met my wife. Some of my kids were born here, and yeah, and here to this day.
Just think
So
you have to go
I went
all the
with
way.
a 20-year break in between
I just
when
think
we
you have to
left.
go like 3,000. How many miles is it across Canada? 33 something?
Oh, it's got to be 5,000 miles. Yeah.
5,000, right. So you have to
Big.
go, hey, that's
Couldn't
not
get any
bad.
further. Couldn't
It's
get any further away.
well, sometimes you got to go real far to find the right partner and stuff like that and everything. Um,
It's a nice place to live. I wouldn't suggest coming out here to work. That's for sure. Nobody works on this island for some reason. You're not really sure how people live here, but it's not a great place to work, but it's a great place to live.
Yeah, I've taken some trips up there with my sons and whatnot, cycling around and everything. It's one of the more beautiful cities in the world, actually,
Oh
Vancouver.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, it's
um,
incredible. We live on the island, so you go
mhm.
to Vancouver and you just keep going. So we live out on that island, and we have a
Was
little
it?
sustainable farm here and a few acres, and trying my hand at sustainable farming, which was also quite a mistake.
I tried. It wasn't called sustainable, but I tried some gardening when I moved to Winnipeg for a job, and there was a whole garden in the backyard, a huge backyard of this house I bought, and they had
Hmm.
a place for a garden, so I tried to garden. Not a good idea.
What, 3 months out of the year,
Yeah, oh
four
yeah, it's
months out of the year?
freezing in Winnipeg too, so you get to know what to do, and I was busy and stuff, so wasn't
Mm.
right. How did you? So why did you study what you studied at school? Let me start with that question.
Mm. Well, to be honest, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to university. Just like a lot of, well, in Canada and the US, right? Undergrad is really for figuring out what you want, which is for in Europe, it's a little bit different, right? It's much more directed. But here, I got into technology, and so I started working as a web developer and a Java developer back in the
Hmm.
early days of Java. And I really wasn't in the environment at all. And I was doing just a lot of cycling and music and doing my coding and things like that. And I started working for a company that would write human resource applications for the U.S. government. So if you wanted to work for the CIA or FBI or one of these guys, you would actually go through. It's like this is before Monster, but it was like a Monster.com sort of thing. It still exists today. So if you want to work Library of Congress or something like that for a big U.S. agency, you go through this thing and it basically tells if they're making things up on your resume and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then I got into scuba diving, and that's when I found the environment. I was just like, I don't know if you scuba dive, but some of your listeners
Oh,
may
sure.
scuba dive, and
I've done
it's
it. I've
like,
done it. Sorry to interrupt. I've done it two times. The
hmm
first time I did it, my ex-brother-in-law um, decided to, pull away from me when I wasn't looking, and I'm like, "Oh shit, I'm all by myself." And the second time he told me a joke. Do you know why divers carry a knife with them? I said, "No, why?" He said, "Well, if a shark comes, you cut your partner and you take off." I said, "Great, you have a great attitude." So,
that's yeah, remind me never to dive with that guy.
yeah, me too.
Well, when you're down there, you probably saw that you can't hide garbage, pollution, environmental degradation. You can't hide it. It's right in front of you all the time. Whereas on land, you can bury it, you can put it behind trees, and that's one of the reasons we don't do much, or not nearly enough in terms of sustainability because you don't see it. And underwater, you see it. And that's what got me started in thinking about sustainability and so on. And then when I went back to school for my master's, that's what I went into. So I went into the environment for the sole purpose of launching my own sort of venture in climate, and that's how it all started from scuba diving. Crazy.
well, I think like you said it before, the bachelor's degree, I mean, you do learn, like I learned the beginning of accounting and then I got my CPA after the bachelor's degree, but it is a time to mature, hopefully. It is a time to, to, I think it's it's a good discussion at the same time. I think there's too much pressure on young people to decide it so quickly what they want to do.
Yeah, well, my kids grew up in Europe, and they were very pressured to go straight in, and then they pressure high school students to pick university or a trade or whatever. And, they're planning their lives out when they're way too young to do it. And, it took me 2 years at university to figure out what I wanted to start looking into. And then it got easier. Right.
Yeah.
But until then, you're just sort of hunting around for what you like. So
Yeah, I
I
didn't,
assume it's still like that.
yeah, I certainly wasn't thinking in even early university. Yeah, I want to be a headhunter when I grow up and whatnot. No, I wanted to be a
Yeah.
pro hockey player. That's what I wanted to be actually. So I think and these days there's so many opportunities, different ways to go that I understand the concept of pick something. For example, if you're great at playing piano, you should be encouraged to play piano big time because that's your big gift or whatever it may be. Or if
Mm,
you're an outstanding hockey player or you just whatever. But I don't think most kids know necessarily, certainly not in high school, never mind even college, what to do. And things happen for a reason. You went scuba diving because somebody said you shouldn't do that because you'll notice stuff. And I
hmm
can, and it's also very so I'm looking for you're impressionable, if you will, when you're down there you know, thinking, seeing nature going on and seeing the problems and everything, why wouldn't it touch anybody? We talked about the Octopus Teacher movie the other day.
Yeah, Ellen's thing. Yeah, yeah.
There's another movie
Great.
with an octopus, by the way, on Netflix now called The Beautiful Creatures. But it's not a it's a really good movie with Sally Field. Don't get off the topic.
Yeah,
Sally Field to check it out. So you were getting into environment
yeah.
and then you started getting jobs in that realm.
No, 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 I didn't. I was still a software developer, and I started getting into it, and I thought, well, gosh, I started looking into the. I don't know if you know where Erwin Laszlo is, but
Hmm.
he's yeah, so he's the systems view of the world, which I think is the best book ever made. It's almost like a pamphlet. If you want to understand systems theory, Erwin Laszlo is a philosopher to go to.
Hmm.
And yeah, I read that book and I was thinking, oh my gosh. See, in my environmental studies class, so my minor was in environmental studies in university, in undergrad. And everybody in my class was basically chaining themselves to to backhoes and spiking trees. And, this is British Columbia. Activism is a big thing. And at the time, now that I'm old, I understand the value of activism for sure. But at the time, I did not. Right. And I was like, these jokers, right? They're not going to change anything. They're going to, make the system close in on itself. If you want to make real change, you got to work within the system. And so, so I took the course on systems theory. And then it started to gel in my head around the monetization of environmental assets and, things like, carbon balance sheets and treating carbon and, well, mostly carbon, but treating environmental assets like assets and liabilities, just like you would on anything else in business. And that's when the seed started. And I was like, oh, okay, well, now there's something. And at that time, this is the 90s, right? So this is when carbon trading and things like that were really starting to kind of take hold, especially in America.
Hmm.
It was a Republican idea back then, by the way, and so it wasn't political. It was, it was a new market, and yeah, so that's what got me into it. So I started taking more environmental studies classes, and so I could understand at least what the hell I was doing. Combine that with my software development, and I was director of marketing for that tech company by then. And then I did, I was like, well, I'm going to take an MBA so I know how to launch a business at least.
Hmm.
And that's what I did. So I invented the system. It took me a few years to build, and uh, yeah, and then raised a little bit of money in Canada, and then quickly realized going to Silicon Valley, where you can raise a lot of money very quickly. And then I moved the whole company to Silicon Valley, and that's really what started things off. But yeah, no, I didn't work in this industry at all. I was a software engineer writing human capital applications for the US government before I got into the environment.
So what did it feel like being in Silicon Valley, where it's, entrepreneurship up the wazoo, but you got this itch for saving the planet type of deal?
Yeah, well, we were one of the first ones in, right? So when I invented that system, I was thinking I was a CEO, but as you know, you're not really a CEO when you start your first company. You're CEO and dishwasher, right?
Right.
And but especially if you're at the very beginning of a huge trend that it was in Silicon Valley was around carbon accounting and trading and things like that. Um, you drink the Kool-Aid a little bit. You're the first one in, you've raised tens of millions of dollars, you're in magazines, you're on TV, you're doing all that, right? ABC interviews and things. And so I have to say, looking back on it now, I kind of laugh because I was totally drinking the Kool-Aid, thinking I was the smartest guy in the room, going up and down Sand Hill Road, raising money, and you know, and that's when you start to detach a little bit from what you're really there to do. And
Mhm.
I see it now, but at the time I thought, boy, I'm on a mission, and
Yeah.
and I was for sure. And we were pretty successful with that venture for sure. And we were able to exit, and I had two others in Silicon Valley later, all in climate finance tech, right? So three tech exits in San Francisco, but the other ones were much quieter. I learned my lesson the first time, getting out there and singing from the rooftops and how great you are. That just invites everybody else to follow behind you who has better connections and more money, basically to copy what you do, right? So
Hmm.
I remember going up to I probably shouldn't mention the VC, but it's a very well-known VC in Sand Hill Road with
Let me think.
a former vice president on their board.
Okay.
And and I went out bragging to them, hey, we're at this valuation and we're so far ahead of everybody else. And they did all kinds of diligence on us. And then the guy who was tasked with doing the diligence winds up quitting the VC, raising $50 million from the same VC to basically do our company. Gets the former vice president on the board of his company, and I had to raise tens of millions of dollars just to compete with the guy.
Yeah.
But the reason they did it is because it was my fault. I was going out there kind of, thinking you're the big man on campus, knowing more than everybody else. And meanwhile, everybody else is just in Silicon Valley, just waiting to basically, piggyback on your idea with better access and more money. So we ended up winning in the end, but it took a long time. It was a real learning experience, I think. And you're never as it's like what's that euphemism about the fish? There's always a bigger fish in the ocean, right? And no matter how big a fish you think you are, you're not a big fish. There's always somebody behind you. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
So yeah.
it is true. I've seen too. What we've seen what happened to Steve Jobs to some degree, and with Apple, and then
Hmm.
there's another fellow that had Ascend Communications. They made a movie about him. It's what's it called with not a dolphin. I don't know something, but he also got ousted from his company. He had built a whole bunch of stuff on the internet. Yeah, it's competitive. It's competitive to say the least.
Yeah,
Um,
it's competitive, but it's also the land of ideas, though, which is the thing that I really like about
right.
America in general, especially. You don't have that spirit of entrepreneurship in a lot of places around the world. It is unique to America. And people want to take risks and they see the vision. Sometimes they don't even see the vision that you see it, but they know that you have one, which is it's a challenging thing in other parts of the world. And so you run into, well, now it's a lot later in my career than now, but you run into people who should be entrepreneurs, but aren't, right? And because of where they are. And it's just not, that there's not that culture of, you
Yeah,
know, but yeah, it's different in Silicon Valley now too. It's a much sort of darker sort of mentality now where
definitely.
social media and it's a different world right now, and it's people are out for attention now instead of really changing the world. So hmm,
Not to
changing
mention,
times.
yeah, and everything that's being spent right now, which we can get into in a tiny bit. When did you what evolved that you ended up in London?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's a yeah. So after our third exit in Silicon Valley, then I you can't really work for a while down there, as you know, and so I started, working with the California Senate and other governments on helping them set up their carbon trading, regimes, which are still going down there.
Hmm.
And into the policy side a little bit. And then I got involved in this group that would work with the White House, the very tail end of the Bush administration, and then through most of the Obama administration in and out, really just sort of advising what's happening around the world in terms of climate finance and so on. And then I went to Amsterdam to run the GRI, it's sort of like the global standard setter
Hmm.
um, for sustainability. Like most people who know GRI know it because of like sustainability reports for
Right.
companies, which it does, but that's not what it's funded to do. Um, yeah. So when I came on, the organization is sort of split into these two, like one was standards and one was really a framework, which I thought was a ridiculous idea, to be completely honest. I just know GRI people watching this, but I thought it was just sort of so counterproductive. Organizations, I'm getting around to London, but um, it's so counterproductive because the organization was really set up to help organizations and investors and governments sort of understand and communicate their commitment to big sustainability issues. Not really to go and talk about them as a PR exercise, but really to sort of understand the risks that are inherent that are really not in their accounting books, right? And I don't want to call it non-financial, but the things that accounting practices don't capture. And that's what it's for. And so you can build a better company, or you can build a better fund, or make a better investment decision, or build a better government. That's what it's for. It's not for sustainability reporting and Deloitte to come in and say, "Hey, you did a really great job," and then you spend some PR dollars putting out your sustainability report.
Right.
That's an abuse of that system. And so one thing that people don't know about GRI is it goes around the world, 94 countries or so, and it puts sustainability metrics into financial regulation. So China's
Mhm.
Belt and Road Strategy has impact baked into it because we put it there. Beijing, and we put it there. Saudi's 2030, Vision 2030, EU directive. It has these things in there because GRI put them. And that's, I feel, is a bit of a feather in the cap. Now, in subsequent years, I mean, GRI really started focusing on the sort of the non-financial accounting world, mostly because of the involvement of the Big Four.
Mhm.
Anyway, but that was too much, and I think I saw my kids maybe 2 days a month with that job, and so when my youngest son was born, I stepped down, and I was between there and London, and then was full time in London after that for several years, and focusing mostly on sustainable policy with large scale institutions. So I was chair of this group called UKSIF. It's like a membership of all the major pension funds and asset managers and banks and sovereign wealth funds and so on. And it's a big group, it's about 11 trillion in assets, that membership.
Wow.
And that's when I started really getting into, well, maybe I can help influence the way that, a lot of these big financial policies work, and how you can help not necessarily direct, but at least influence these really, really large capital flows, not only in country, but between countries. And that was the bulk of my work in London for the whole time. And if it wasn't for COVID, it'd still be there. So, yeah, after COVID, we spent all of COVID in Scotland. And Boris Johnson was telling us, hey, COVID's going to be 2 weeks, right? Or it's going to be over in a day. So we just spent time in our cabin up in Aberdeenshire, and then it just didn't end. We were there for a couple of years, and then after COVID, there was no reason for me to go back to London and to do that giant commute every day. We lived in the Cotswolds, which is way outside of London, and so came back to Canada.
Did you
There you go. 20 years. That's where we were going.
yeah, and all started from scuba diving.
All started from scuba diving, which I still do.
Um thank and did you a couple of things. Did you ever I always thought the sustainability indexes and whatnot um, would have an impact on candidates who cared about that stuff would want to go to companies who believed in that. Um, was there ever any measurement on that
Hmm.
or an impact on that? And yeah,
Yeah, in the early days of GRI, in the early days when I got there, GRI had been there for 30 years, right? Or 20, yeah, 30 years. And it was a different animal. It was, I think as CEO, I reported to 76 people. It was completely insane. And it had been, I'll just say it. I think those organizations and many of them were totally captured by, an industry that wanted to see um, an accounting business for sustainability. And the tool was not fit for purpose, right? So GRI, just like the other, I hate to call them standards bodies, but frameworks and standards bodies, there's no policing of these things. And without any policing or enforcement, it's really hard. So in the sustainability reports became these big corporate affairs that few people would read.
right,
So, but originally, that is exactly what it was for, right? That you could, as an individual, go, gosh, there's a good company. I want to work for these companies. They've got their values straight. But it became basically something that PwC or Deloitte or KPMG would put together for you.
right.
And I mean, it was a great business for them. That's great. But it became something different. And yeah, I did try to kind of bring it back to its roots, but I wasn't successful.
Yeah, and it's too bad because in my business, candidates ask me those questions even, and obviously consumers do too. There was a point there, everybody would look to buy from companies that were sustainable and they did, sustainable, farming to just,
Hmm.
whatever. So it's kind of a shame that and I know companies that belabored doing their reports, um,
Yeah.
because it just
But
took
you
them
know what,
too.
Mark? The jury's not out, right? So even though these sustainability reports really only talk about the good stuff, there's nobody really forcing them to talk about the bad stuff. Um, with the use of AI and, huge being able to take massive amounts of data, too much for any one person to read and get a good idea of what companies are doing good and what ones aren't. Um, huh, I think we might be on the cusp of a new era with transparency for companies. And GRI is sort of like is data that can be consumed along with everything else to be able to
No, that would
choose
be.
more intelligently what companies you work with or for. And yeah, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think people want that. People I work with as candidates, they're not looking for jobs, but they would love to go to a place where there's opportunity and the company really stands for something and they make money
Hmm.
at the same time because you should
Yeah.
be able to do both. So I could see that there would be a high interest. I see it all the time. They Candidates, again, they're great candidates, ask me, so what is their purpose? What do they stand for? They know what they do, but they want to know do they really mean it and things of that
Yeah.
nature, or they won't take the job. So a little bit fast forward. Um, I want you to share a little bit about, all the stuff you're doing right now. Um, you're involved in a number of things. One that I know the best is Forum for Impact. But talk to me,
Yeah. Yeah.
just tell everybody what you're doing right now, why you're doing it, and why it's important.
Yeah. I essentially do three things now. So, or really two, but Um, I give 25% of my time and resources and money away to nonprofits and academia. So I'm a adjunct professor in sustainable finance at my alma mater, where I got my MBA.
Not
And
Western.
Not Western, no, University of Victoria. Great school, great school.
Yeah.
Um, and I sit on the board of a group. I always have one multilateral, one international board I sit on. And At the moment, it is the International Institute for Sustainable Development, a wonderful, wonderful organization based in Geneva, in Canada. And we basically support sustainable development projects in 30 countries. Every year, we finance, oh gosh, 400 or so projects in mostly in the global south. And We work on behalf of governments and development banks and donors all over the world. It's one of the last great think tanks in sustainability. It really is kind of a bit of an honor to serve on that board. Great one. Um, and I do some philanthropy myself and work with lots of different philanthropists and family offices and do lots of talks in that area and stuff like that, as you know. Second, I still do some climate investing myself, and I chair a little group, a little fund in the climate space that focuses on carbon development, carbon projects, and carbon risk, and mostly in Africa and the global south. I serve as an advisor to sort of the next phase of carbon projects being developed in Africa. So, as you might know, it's kind of like the SDGs. They have a limited lifespan. So uh, uh, I think it's the end of next year. The carbon trading regime in Africa is pretty much end of life, and so the next phase, it's almost $1 trillion, 800 so billion. The next phase of carbon finance in Africa is being developed, and so I serve on the secretariat of that group to
Oh,
sort of align a lot of those carbon projects with their national adaptation plans and
hmm.
all of that kind of stuff. So I love sort of being in that sort of
I
policy,
bet.
sort of finance sort of area. So that's wonderful. We'll be going over in July to address the heads of all of the sovereign wealth funds in Africa and some from the GCC too. They meet once a year, basically to talk to them about the inherent risk in climate finance. That they have that they don't realize that they have. So, yeah, so I get asked to do a lot of this kind of stuff. So that's all on the nonprofit side. And then, yeah, and the rest is really Forum for Impact. So it's a group that I founded 6 years ago, and it's more of a community of family offices and high net worth individuals. We meet all over the world. Um, We're in 9 countries at the moment. There's a little over 1,000 of us now. And about half of those are family office, and the rest are sort of high net worth, and then like a larger network of CEOs and politicians and things. And the point of that group is really to um, create these coalitions of the willing around important impacts. I'm not out trying to change anybody's mind or convert people to impact investment. This is really just investors and philanthropists that are already very active in these spaces, and they want to connect with others that are doing something similar. So, for those in your audience that may be in the family office community, family offices all know each other, but very few of them actually work together for all kinds of reasons. And but say you're a family office that's doing a ton in, say, sustainable ocean investment. Well, I probably know somebody or probably dozens of people in
I'm
other
sure you
countries that are doing
do.
something similar. So the idea is, well, maybe we should all get together. FFI, we meet, I think this year we've got 8 countries. We'll see. The geopolitics is a little crazy this year, so we'll see where everything ends up. But um, and these are all just sort of private groups. It actually came from, uh, I'll tell you how it started. Just being around the space for a long time, you wind up on a lot of boards and investment committees and things. And yeah, I was on the board of a couple of foundations, investment committees or family offices. They all had the same problem. Younger generation was taking over the family office. It was the greatest transfer of wealth in history. And they all care about impact and climate change and gender equality and SDGs and all the things that I've spent my life doing.
Yeah.
And so the funds, and it's not that the principles of those funds are against those things. They're just more, they don't want to bet the family farm like 3 generations or 4 generations of real estate investment on impact because they don't know anything. So they're turning to me going, "Hey, well, can you advise us on what to do?" And I was thinking, well, you don't need my advice. You really should just be meeting some other people who are a little further along the journey than you. And it's like, well, do you know of any? I was like, I know lots. So I just started connecting them. So 2 became 5, became 10. Once we had 25 of us, we started meeting in the Bahamas every year. Myself and one of my partners in London. And then it just kept growing. I take nothing for this. I don't take remuneration for this. I put these events on out of myself, out of my own time and dime. And and then we bring sponsors and so on to break even. But this is not a business enterprise. This is really just a group that is out there trying to make about as much impact as we possibly can. So in 2024, we mobilized about 60 million, a little over 60 million within our community, mostly in philanthropy. And then last year, we broke 100 million. So 65% of that was philanthropy, and the rest was for profit. And then, so we're hoping to double again this year. So
And how do you
that's what it
measure
is.
that?
Based on the different initiatives that we're able to do within our group. We don't fundraise for people. We don't put investors and companies together. I mean, I do that in my own personal time, but we don't do that for impact. There's no solicitation within that group.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, for instance, last year, we brought a lot of people together for sustainable oceans, and one of the big barriers that we found in this particular region of the world, excuse me, was really that there's a lot of public funding and economic development funding going into sustainable oceans with very little investment. Actually, it's very little investment. And one of the barriers that we found just from convening these people who spend their lives in this space was, well, hey, there's not really any way for me to use my investment or philanthropic dollars to work with a lot of these big programs and projects that the government is already funding because there's no blended finance instrument.
Hmm.
Okay, well, great. Let's create one. We've got the economic development agencies, we got the family offices, we got the investors, institutions, we got everybody in this room to be able to create one. So that's what we did, right? So we created a $25 million institution that would basically create blended finance models for this particular region. And now that's expanded. That group has expanded beyond. Now it's in Saudi, and it's in Caribbean, and it's in these different countries. So that's what the group does. It sees if we can find barriers to investment or philanthropic efforts as a way to kind of galvanize sort of interest. Donor advised funds is another area we do a lot of work in, and really that's more of an education program with partners to say, You're putting capital in a donor advised funds, you're getting a tax receipt. Well, maybe you should be using that for
Sure.
impact investment, doing much more with that money than than is being used for now. And just
Yeah.
thinking differently about wealth and how to use that capital. We don't, as it's grown, FFI is doing all kinds of different things. I think we have 9 different programs running right now. It's quite a bit. It's more than I ever intended to do with FFI. So it's sort of morphing into different things as we grow globally. But yeah, it's been a fantastic. It's been a real sort of honor to see all the activities sort of happen over the years on what this is. So
Well, it's an interesting thread because you seem to always have been exploring from the guitar trips early on with the band to the scuba diving to this and that but always looking to make an impact. And I think,
oh yeah,
you don't need my flattery, but I mean, if you're looking to make an impact and you're authentic about it, which I would vouch to everybody you absolutely are, and I would also vouch that Form for Impact is awesome because it's so authentic in people coming together and no one selling to
I
each
get that
other.
comment all the time.
Yeah.
That's the highest praise that you could give that network, right?
Yeah.
And you've gone to these, I mean, I stopped going to WEF after 7 times.
Right.
Well, I got like 4, and not to say it's not good. It's
Mhm.
just that it became inauthentic for me. Or I go to the Asia ones where I found much better. It was the authenticity of it. And yeah, that's the highest praise you could give FFI because it's a room of true believers that really want to do good for the world. And yeah, sure, some of them are very, very wealthy individuals of great means, but that's not the point. The point is, bringing capital allocators together to solve really, really hairy problems to be able to allow others to invest more. That's what it's
I've
about.
never compared it to this before, but I was talking about sports, who would have thought recently. And we were talking about, when our kids played hockey and you had parents and you traveled with these parents, became like a family type of thing. And in that family, there was a parent that was a top attorney in a law firm. And in that family was a UPS driver. And in that family was a doctor. And in that family was
Mm.
somebody that, was a gardener. Um, and they were all doing something together. It's a little different, but it's an interesting analogy to help their kids be the best kids they could be in playing the sport and all that. And they were authentic in their way that it didn't matter what their titles were or whatnot. They all wanted the same thing. That's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like that. Although we do kind of curate these things
Well, of course. I mean, it's
because they
not an
require
exact
curation.
strategy,
It's
but
not just a
my
mismatch.
but my point is the authenticity is there to come together, and it's not so much what your title is, or you have six more zeros ahead of me, what I make, or whatever. It's coming together for the same purpose, and like the first one I went to, I think was in the Bahamas, and it was so cool because it was just so natural and
Yeah,
authentic there and stuff. So I think you've done
yeah.
done great there. And I got one more question,
Mm,
because in LA we say keep them wanting more so we can do a sequel, basically. That's what you do. So um, with everything that's gone on. And you've had a lot of amazing experiences, and we've had COVID, as you mentioned, and now we're almost in the second half, almost of 2026 already, amazingly.
mm,
What are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
mm. Well, what am I most grateful for? I guess well, it's a bunch of different ways to answer that. I think I'm most grateful for, well, I guess being lucky enough now to spend my time on exactly what I want instead of having to work for a living, right? And it not that the things I do is not work, but I'm doing exactly what I want to do, and I feel very fulfilled doing it.
Yeah,
Right. So
that's big.
I'm very grateful for that. Like I wake up in the morning, and even though, I mean, of course, things drive me crazy all the time, but that's probably what I'm most grateful for because then I can pursue things that I'm passionate about and work on this stuff at the same time.
Hmm.
That isn't like most people, right? And I understand that. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I say, what was the other half of that question? I forgot. Got wrapped up in.
It's what are you most hopeful for?
Um, well, I think we've been through this sort of these cycles of I won't say conservatism. I don't know if that's the right word, but this madness around anti-sustainability, anti-ESG, anti-impact. And it's happened a few times. It dates me when I say this, but it's a little bit like a waterbed, right? When governments get in, they're fairly conservative, they push those things down. Well, then that's the time for the family office, high net worth, philanthropic communities to really rise up and do great things, right? And it is, and it's a massive opportunity for investment too, if you do it in the right way. Well, this time is different, right? I mean, this time, maybe there's a hole through the waterbed. I don't know. But what I'm most hopeful for is a return to normalcy. This geopolitical madness that we're in. And it's not just coming from the States, it's global. I would just like to see a return to normalcy so people can focus on what's important. Because what happens in times like this is people lose focus on what's important.
Yeah.
So, there's little groups like us out there trying to, keep things that we feel are important in the spotlight, but it's a challenge. And so, I'm just looking forward to the day when things get back to normal.
Well, we had a little hope in Hungary with the election, in that sense. So that was good.
Oh, I have no doubt we'll get there. I have no doubt we'll get there. Things like this cannot last forever. However, how much damage will be done in the meantime. I had lots of friends at USAID and Brookings and places like that that are all out, and the damage being done is unbelievable. But not just there, in a lot of places around the world. So it's going to take a long time to come back from this. So a lot
Yeah.
of work to do for sure.
Well, I'm grateful that I have a friend that lives in close to Vancouver, and 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 I think I'm grateful and hopeful for the same thing. I mean, you are a leader who cares, and I don't say that to be cute, but you are, and you've shown it. And so that's what keeps me hopeful as well. And when I interview and have young people on, I just had my youngest one on, ever 9 years old,
Oh
um,
wow. Holy
that
cow.
does stuff with 3D printing on some amazing
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
So
How cool is that?
when you see that, it gives you hope all the time. So I'm hopeful for that too. So thanks for being a leader who cares. Thanks for sharing all that and being on the series. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Mark. Appreciate it.